Hey, financially savvy travelers, you are about to hear from someone who's hosted millions of travelers across Europe. Oliver Winter doesn't just know affordable travel, he's helping shape the future. As the founder of A&O Hostels and Hotels, one of the fastest growing hostel brands in Europe, Oliver brings a behind the scenes perspective on how to travel smarter across the European continent. We're talking second cities you need to have on your radar, booking hacks to stretch your travel budget further, and how hostels cater to a wide variety of travelers and travel styles and travel budgets, from solo adventures to families and remote workers. So be sure to stick to the end of the episode because Oliver shares also some timeless advice for planning epic Europe trips, and you do not want to miss it. I'm Danielle Desir Corbett. Let's go ahead and jump in. Welcome to The Thought Card, a podcast about travel and money, where planning, saving, and creativity leads to affording travel, building wealth, and paying off debt. We are the financially savvy travelers. Oliver, I'm excited to chat with you because I've been to Europe many times, I would say at this point, but we never actually talked about European travel extensively on the podcast. So having you on, I'm just really excited. And I want to start off with what you're seeing right now in terms of affordable European travel. And when I say affordable, it's a big word because affordable means so many different things to so many different people, right? But just kind of taking a pulse, like what are you seeing right now in affordable European travel?
That's a very good question. And first of all, thanks to having me here. I think, first of all, you know it if you travel to Europe already, but if you're first time in Europe, I think you will be positively surprised how cheap Europe is compared to the US. Yeah, you get a lot of value for your money. And in general, if you see entire Europe, I would say a rule of thumb is the further south in Europe, the more affordable life is. And we have a lot of really great low-cost airlines in Europe, and they made budget travel really booming since years. Yeah, long distance trains, we have really good long distance trains, but especially the fast trains, they are most often more expensive than the low-cost airlines. If you take slow trains, what could be even a great experience, you can find great deals and meet great people, by the way. Yeah, better in a train than sitting in a plane, and watch the beautiful landscape passing by the window. And what is even a great way to travel across Europe is long distance coaches. That's very popular since last 5 years, especially most popular is Flixbus. And here you can find, for example, deals like from Berlin to Paris, what is an 8 hours ride for 30 euros. So really, really low cost. I would say, so the major trend is really low cost airlines like the biggest Ryanair, EasyJet, and the long distance coaches. What we also can see in Europe here, another emerging trend is to visit secondary cities. That's something like, I would say, Thessaloniki instead of Athens, yeah, or Rotterdam versus Amsterdam, yeah. They are just as full of culture and typical of the country with same cuisine, etc., but less crowded, much cheaper or affordable. And another really more European trend is sustainability and community. Yeah. So travelers in Europe are seeking not just cheap stays, but meaningful experiences. Yeah. So favoring accommodation, prioritize eco initiatives and local impact. Yeah. European travelers care more about their footprint and their impact on the local economy. For example, to support really local food suppliers or local gift shops, craft shops. They love to mitigate their carbon footprint. What we see since some years, so flight shame is over. That's people have to fly again. Yeah, but lower the impact and feel good by spending the money, yeah, responsible and for local or more green stuff. This is super trendy.
For me, what's meaningful is making that connection, like you mentioned, like it's connecting to locals, supporting them, knowing that this is going to impact their lives and their families. These are all really important things to just kind of keep in the back of our minds. I also love that you mentioned about the long distance coaches because that's something that I haven't really heard of much. I know about the trains, but it's really interesting that coaches, meaning buses, that's what we use in the US. So
Yeah.
these buses, they could be overnight, they could be during the day, but it's a way to slow down but also reduce the cost of transportation as well.
Absolutely. Cost-wise, it's mostly the best deal you can have. Of course, the disadvantage of a bus or coach is if there's a traffic jam, you're in in the middle of the traffic jam, so you're even as slow as the cars around you. That could happen. So a train has usually no traffic jam, or a plane doesn't have, but a coach could have it. But the coaches, even today, for example, they all have fast Wi-Fi and they serve some snacks and water and all this stuff as well. So they are better equipped than in let's say, in the old days. It gives you a bit more comfort, of course, in a plane or in a train, but coaches, cost-wise, it's unbeatable.
I'm excited because we're planning to go to do a 2-week Europe trip next year, and I've never considered coaches. So I think I'm going to try to add that into my plans just to have that experience. So I appreciate that inspiration. Okay, so a lot of my listeners may have stayed at hostels when they were younger. Now they're thinking more hotels, maybe Airbnbs, maybe vacation rentals, that kind of thing. But I really want to set the record straight. Okay. I want folks to know that hostels are a great opportunity. And I'd love to hear what can we expect from the hostel kind of lifestyle and the accommodations and amenities. What can we expect today?
Yes, definitely hostels have nothing to do with the hostels 20 years ago. Yeah. When I used my first hostels, yeah. So with the hostel father, with the dreadlocks and smoking pot and playing guitar in the evening. And you had this 20 bedded rooms, or I stayed once I remember on Vancouver Island in a 36 bedded dormitory. So this you will not find anymore in these days. So if we speak about European hostels, modern hostels are like hybrid hotels. Think private rooms with ensuite bathrooms, co-working spaces. It's a big thing for us. You find a cafe or a bar inside an hostel, even family rooms for us, as A&O, for example, it's a big topic, all at budget price, 24 hours open. It has to be clean and safe. And in the most hostels, yeah, I would say you find maximum 6 or 8 bedded dormitories. Yeah, not as said before, this 20 bedded, that's history. Small dorms, all en suite, so all with a private bathroom to use. And even today, a standard is that for female travelers, you can find female dorms. Yeah. So you can request female dorms for more safetiness. If you visit the European hostels, the surprising factor is that these hostels, many of them looking more like boutique hotels today, design-wise and service-wise, but with a far more social, inclusive vibe, I would say.
Yes. And I want to talk particular about the families because that to me is important. I have a 3-year-old and that is a major concern is how hostels are, and especially A&O hostels and hotels, how are you catering your properties to families? Whether they have young children or maybe they're traveling with like maybe multi-generational families as well.
Yeah, that's also a very good point. And we're driving this evolution a little bit, or maybe the family is driving us. It's like hand and egg. Families is a big and very important customer segment for us. And we see many families using hostels these days. And we're offering family rooms. What means you find, for example, you find 2 single beds standing in the room and 1 bunk bed or 2 bunk beds in addition to the single beds. Child-friendly amenities, quiet zones. For example, at A&O, even in each A&O, we have a stroller rental. And for the families, of course, we have special affordable packages and deals so that the kids on some dates can stay for free, for example, visit with parents or grandparents, don't pay for the breakfast. So many special amenities, services for the families.
That's really important because when I started my family, my whole perspective on what I need when I'm traveling has changed so much. Like just having stroller rental access, I think is huge because let's say if yours breaks or let's say you just kind of need something for the day, it could be very difficult to find what you need, like diapers and wipes and running around. So the convenience, I think, is and it's very thoughtful. So I appreciate all of your thoughtfulness and thinking through like what do families really need to have an amazing experience.
For families, sometimes it's very helpful to find a microwave, to heat a meal, a travel meal, or just a milk bottle to rent a kettle or something like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I would love to pivot a little bit to talk about the nitty-gritty of packing because I know if you are staying at a hybrid hostel hotel, sometimes there's things that you should pack with you to kind of keep yourself prepared. I know I've been to hostels and I forgot my converter. So, US, when you go to Europe, our plugs are different. So, something like that, I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot it. But luckily, it was already there. I went to the store in the hostel and it was all fine. But any tips like that, like when we're considering packing to Europe or packing to stay at a hostel in Europe, like what should we be thinking about?
If you intend to use dormitories, so this multi-bedded rooms, then definitely you need a padlock for your locker. You will find a locker in any dormitory room. And for this, you need your padlock. If you don't have one, you can rent or borrow one for sure. But if you have one, that's great. Same with a towel. You can rent a towel, of course, but if you have your own towel with you, saves maybe money, yeah, because some hostels charge for the towels extra. A portable charger with a converter, ideally, that's helpful. Yeah, for Europe, as you said, you need a converter or adapter. Even if you sleep in a multi-bedded room, a sleep mask, earplugs for shared rooms, if you have a sensitive sleep, that could be very, very helpful. What I also would suggest to bring with you is a reusable water bottle and tote for the sustainability and even maybe a hint or yeah that in the most European countries you can drink the water on tap. That means you can really fill your water bottle in every room on every tap you find. Maybe not in the Mediterranean, so that means not in Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece, but in this here in the cities you find everywhere you find this public drinking fountains. And that's even, for example, in Rome, I love it to walk through Rome and fill my bottle on a 2000 years old fountain where you know that maybe Caesar or Spartacus already used it. Yeah. So that's fantastic, really.
It's so different from the US. So I think everything you mentioned here is just a great kind of checklist for us to kind of keep that in mind when we are visiting to Europe. So, Oliver, I want to talk about like your passion for creating A&O, founding, leading this team. Where did this passion for creating affordable accommodations come from? Like what sparked it? It sounds like you are also a hostel goer back in the day. So, love to hear a little bit of your origin story.
The short version or the long version? I try to keep it short, but I grew up in the former East German part. That was a part of Germany where we didn't been allowed to travel everywhere abroad the globe. So that was for us in my childhood. I was sure I can travel in my entire life. Can travel to Eastern Europe. That's it. Yeah. When I was 15, I became 15. I had a very big luck that the wall came down and the entire world was open. And my biggest desire, of course, was then to discover the world, use this big opportunities to travel as much as I can. I finished my school, and then between school and before I started this college, I used this time to travel around the world, to see as many countries I could see in 6, 7 months when I traveled around. And I always say that was not low budget, that was no budget. Yeah, I had 1,000 euros per month, including flights.
There's levels, right? There's budget, there's no budget.
Yeah, yeah. I listen very excited to your one of your last podcasts with the 75 euros a day. Yeah, that remembers it.
Yes, with Matt. Yes. Hmm.
So for me, one of the greatest experience after 3, 4, 5 days in a tent was always to check in into an hostel, to use amenities like a laundry, have access to a kitchen, yeah, to really have cook not on your stove, yeah, so really use a full kitchen and the oven or something like this, have a warm shower. I love this idea of hostels and being back at home to Berlin, my home city. I always had this in my mind, yeah, and I started at the university to study to become a teacher later, yeah, but then this idea was already born and set in my head, and I figured out then that there have been not many hostels, and even though some non-commercial providers like this YHA, etc., that was existing, but not what I saw during my travel in New Zealand, in the US, in Australia. And I had this idea and this passion to start with A&O hostels.
I love that. And you're growing very fast. I know you have big goals to continue expanding to many different cities across Europe. So, we also mentioned early on about these second cities, how a lot of people are going to cities that are probably like not the first thing that they think about, but equally amazing. So, what are some of your favorite second cities, and what cities are you thinking of expanding to with A&O?
So we are in total, we are today in 42 cities. And I would say there of 10, 15 cities are these secondary cities. So not the capitals, not the very big famous cities. So yeah, I'd like to give you maybe two examples. So one is Weimar, a very small city in Turin in south of Germany, instead of, for example, Frankfurt, what is 2 hours away by car and well known. Weimar is a cozy, it's not a village, it's a city, but really small, 60,000 inhabitants, I would say. This city was the Silicon Valley of the 18th century. Yeah, so everyone was here. Every European scientist, artist, writer, politicians, yeah, been there. And you can really walk in the footsteps if you go through Weimar and discover, feel, smell, feel this vibe of the 18th century and the Silicon Valley of the former time. That's one example. Another one is, for example, in Belgium, Antwerp instead of Brussels. It's 40 minutes by train between Antwerp and Brussels, so it's a very short distance. You can fly into Brussels, make a little bit Brussels, and then why not staying and sleeping in Antwerp? Yeah? Amazing architecture, really amazing. And what I found interesting with Antwerp, it was the most important financial place, financial center in Europe before London was it. So, for example, the city has one of the oldest stock exchange in the world. I think it was built in 1530, something like this. And so buildings like this you can discover in this city. Perfect.
You know what I love about the two examples that you shared is that these quote second cities have huge and like vast history, right? There's
Yeah.
so much as travelers that we can discover more about a destination, or just there's so much to discover beyond just looking at the larger cities. So I really do love that. I would love to also tie in. So you mentioned your background and that trip early on that opened your eyes to travel. How are you incorporating that love for travel, or like that first initial trip, that first spark into all the things and decisions that you make for A&O Hotels? Like, how is that love for travel seen in your work that you do every day?
What never changed as the main purpose or the main mission of our company, we are now 25 years old, is really this idea of participation. Yeah, that inspires us every morning again. Yeah, that what we do is we like really to be low or easy accessible for everyone. And that we allow, and here I speak mostly about that's affordable, that you can afford it, yeah, that you can pay for it, and that not money decides if you can see a city, if you can take part on a school trip, on a field trip, or with your sports club, or even if you travel on your own. Yeah, that money should not be the criteria that you say, oh, sorry, I can't visit Weimar or Antwerp. Yeah, I think that's the biggest driver. Is really why we fighting every day to offer an affordable product and service.
You know, that spoke to my heart because that is exactly the reason why it took me so long to discover travel, is because I said to myself at the time, I didn't really know, I said money, it was what I was missing. In part, it was true. Like I had no budget, which is true. But we hear so many incredible stories of people who are doing it anyway. And I love that that participation is part of your mission, because it just makes travel more accessible to people all over the world. So it's very powerful and so relatable.
Yeah. And I believe even in this idea of that on the one hand, travel is a personal desire of more or less everyone. And on the other hand, travel is so important really to see and feel that everywhere in every country in the world, you find more nice people than unnice people. Yeah. You find kind people, you find help, and that's the best way really against any racism or stuff like this. Yeah. Because travel opens your eyes and yeah, makes you much more tolerant.
Connecting to people, the country, the world all around, which is very, very powerful. I think this is a good segue for value, because as financially savvy travelers, we're not always looking for the cheapest. I would say most of the time we're not looking for the cheapest. We're looking for value. And value, again, means so many different things to so many different people. So if someone is planning a trip to Europe and they're looking for value, right? Meaning they're not just looking at the price of their accommodation, but they're looking for value. What are the things that you think that they should be thinking about? Is it the location of where they're staying? Is it maybe they may need free breakfast as a value? Like there's all these things that we could think about beyond how much it costs per night. So any thoughts on that?
You should first consider what is your personal value. Is it to save time during your trip, yeah, and see as most as possible? Then maybe better to pay a little bit more and be very, very centrally located. Or you say, no, I have time and maybe, yeah, for me, it's fine as long as I have a great connectivity, but I can travel, take the train or whatever the public transportation for 30 minutes or 40 minutes in the morning. That's not stressing me at all. Then fine, then choose something more outside, and maybe it's a bit more silent, more cozy, or more you get more comfort or service for the same money. Do you love to have your breakfast in the morning in the place where you're staying, or are you someone saying no? Anyway, I like to eat like the locals in the bakery next around the corner. Yeah, I think this depends really on your personal mood, so to say, what you are preferring.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful because there's travel style, which I say, okay, perhaps maybe you like to fly first class, or maybe you like to do trains and all of that. But then there's also, like you mentioned, the priorities, right? Because maybe you're doing a Europe trip, but you're going to be working at the same time. So maybe co working accommodation makes the most sense, right? Maybe somewhere that's more quiet makes the most sense. So I think thinking about what your priorities are and kind of matching that to your accommodation, it definitely makes sense there. Now, I want to definitely get into a little bit of a nitty gritty for in terms of booking our stays. Would you recommend us looking at these more larger marketplaces, or would you prefer, or would you say that it's preferable to go and book directly with the accommodation of your choice? Any thoughts on that booking process?
There are maybe two minds about it, yeah, or two ideas. As a provider, of course, I would say book direct, yeah, book at brand.com, whatever is the brand, yeah, that's you will probably even get the best deal, or you could even maybe have great deals on big brands like hostelworld.com, for example, or booking.com, yeah, to mention maybe the two biggest. That has even an advantage that you can compare easily. You can compare by location, or you can filter by reviews or by price or whatever. That's much easier than maybe to Google everything and then check out on each brand.com. That depends a little bit how many time you like to spend. And it's on Hostelworld or booking.com. It's really comfortable and convenient to check in or to do your booking, to place your booking. For ANO Hostels, speaking for ANO Hostels, I can say the best deal you will find on brand.com on our own website, for example. But I only can speak here for AO Hostels.
Personally, I like to start off with those I actually like TripAdvisor, for example, here in the US. So I kind of can see everything and look. Then I kind of zero when I know what I'm looking for. I love to go on the book directly on the website. Sometimes there's like a pop up that's like, hey, like, you can save booking direct, or there may be like more incentives, maybe bottle of water or like a tour or something. Like there's things that makes it super incentivizes us to go book direct. So I appreciate that. I always love to book direct, and especially knowing that it goes directly to the communities that we were talking about very in the beginning. So I think that's very, very important. Okay, so Oliver, to wrap us up, you've hosted millions of travelers. What's one timeless piece of advice that you would share with someone who is planning a European trip, whether it's their first one or it's their 20th because they love coming to Europe so much? Any timeless piece of advice?
My advice would be that Europe is really so various, yeah, so full of culture and history, so many countries, so many stories to tell about. I think the best advice is really don't try to see it all. So really set a focus, slow down, because anyway, you can't pack or put this all in one travel. Yeah. So that's impossible. And otherwise you will come back and say, what was this? Yeah. I never connected. I never smelled it. I've never felt it. Never. So stay a little bit longer, dive in deeper wherever it's possible. Yeah. Yeah, when you found a wonderful city, a wonderful beach, a nice mountain, a nice valley, whatever, yeah, go with the locals, yeah, that's what I'm meaning. Yeah, try to see where the locals buy their food, to find the nicest markets, for example, yeah, where they eat, to find the best bars and restaurants. Listen to other travelers. I think that's everywhere very important. Yeah, the best ideas, the best direct feedback, the most actual feedback you get from the travelers staying in the same place like you. Yeah, ask them, where did you be in the last days, and what would you recommend to me, and what even you would never recommend to me? What is waste of my time? It's also important to know. Really small advice, but important, because we see that guests, international guests, are always surprised to see it. In Europe, you always need a little bit of cash as well. Yeah. So we, despite maybe from the Scandics, so from our Nordic countries and from UK, what is a bit more advanced here. But if you go in a bakery somewhere in Barcelona, yeah, or in a nice restaurant in Brussels, you will maybe need cash and can't pay by card. Yeah. I think that's really important advice, that you are prepared that maybe someone is not accepting your card and awaiting that you pay cash.
All right, financially savvy travelers, what did you think of this episode? I promised you all the goods, and Oliver definitely delivered. And we are so grateful to have him on the podcast. I know that you are definitely interested in more financially savvy tips and tricks and hacks. So I have another episode for you to listen to right after this one. So go ahead and queue it up. You can go to the episode description. I have the links all there for you. I recommend listening to episode 195 next. That's with Matthew Kepnes, or aka Nomadic Matt. And we talk about if budget travel is still possible in 2025 and beyond. And in particular, he breaks down his ability to travel on $75 a day in particular. So this is a great conversation to listen to right after this one, and I will see you there.